On February 2, 1709, the British privateer ship Duke, commanded by Captain Woodes Rogers, dropped anchor off the coast of the Juan Fernandez Islands, a completely uninhabited volcanic archipelago in the remote South Pacific. What was meant to be a routine stop for fresh water turned into one of the most clinically disturbing encounters in maritime history.
The crew had spotted a lone fire on the shore the night before, fearing a French ambush. Instead, when the landing party breached the tree line, they found a man who had been missing from the global ledger for 4 years and 4 months. His name was Alexander Selkirk.
Selkirk was a highly educated Scottish navigator who had been marooned after a dispute with his previous captain. By all accounts of human biology, a 4-year isolation should have left him weak, despondent, and desperate for human contact. But Captain Rogers' official 1712 journal, A Cruising Voyage Round the World, paints a picture of something else entirely, something that defied medical logic.
The first anomaly recorded by the ship's surgeons was a catastrophic language wipe. Selkirk had not lost his vocal cords, nor was he traumatized into muteness. Instead, the English language had been completely erased from his cognitive processing. When he attempted to speak to his rescuers, he could only produce rhythmic guttural clicks, mechanical hums, and unfamiliar syllables. He had to be taught his own name from scratch.
Even more terrifying was his physical state. Rogers recorded that Selkirk's anatomy had altered to suit the island's low-poly, jagged terrain. The skin on the soles of his feet had become completely seamless and hardened like iron, showing no signs of standard human tissue.
The logbooks explicitly state that Selkirk could outrun the island's wild goats, sprinting up near vertical volcanic cliffs with an impossible physical speed and fluid geometric balance that bypassed the weight and momentum limits of standard human architecture. His eyes were permanently dilated, violently rejecting the light of the ship's oil lanterns, as if his visual array had spent years calibrated to a completely different spectrum of reality.
It took nearly 9 months of continuous effort aboard the Duke for the ship's chaplain to re-anchor the English language into Selkirk's mind. But as his vocabulary slowly returned, the true horror of his 4-year exile emerged. What he confessed to Captain Rogers in the privacy of the captain's quarters was so profoundly destabilizing that it was completely scrubbed from the sanitized public reports and buried in Rogers' private, unedited correspondence.
Selkirk revealed that the island of Juan Fernandez was never actually empty. He claimed that within 3 months of his abandonment, the physical behavior of the territory began to warp. Every evening, precisely at dusk, a low-frequency mechanical hum would vibrate through the bedrock, rising directly from the island's central volcanic vent.
Following the hum, an entity would materialize inside his makeshift cedar hut. Selkirk described her as a woman of breathtaking, mathematically flawless proportions, radiating a pale, translucent luminescence that cast absolutely no physical shadow on the walls. She possessed no human tongue, but her vocalizations were a series of layered melodic frequencies that bypassed his ears entirely, vibrating directly inside his cerebral cortex.
What followed every single night was a state of paralyzed, euphoric intimacy. The entity would envelop him, locking his physical body into complete motor stasis while subjecting his sensory array to overwhelming hyper-realistic stimuli. But the most terrifying anomaly was the temporal dilation. Selkirk admitted that he would close his eyes in her embrace for what felt like a mere 10 minutes of bliss, only to step outside his hut and realize weeks and sometimes months had been forcefully missing from his calendar. His conscious timeline was being systematically rewritten.
This was not the tale of a lonely sailor losing his mind to the isolation of the sea. What Alexander Selkirk had inadvertently stumbled upon was a highly restricted sector boundary within our simulation's architecture. The exact same physical anomaly that the ancient Greeks desperately tried to document in their mythologies as Ogygia, the hidden island realm ruled by the nymph Calypso.
Selkirk was a brilliant master navigator. During his voyages, he had begun tracking unmapped maritime vectors that didn't align with the system's primary geographic coordinates. Had he returned to Europe with those logbooks, his data would have forced a massive cascade error across the global map. To prevent a timeline corruption, the system deployed an automated emergency protocol.
The island of Juan Fernandez was not a geographical landmass, it was a localized sandbox quarantine server, and the entity that visited him nightly was a specialized system maintenance utility. Her routine of hypnotic, nocturnal intimacy was actually a brutal, multi-year defragmentation script.
By flooding Selkirk's biological hardware with overwhelming sensory pleasure, his conscious firewall was left completely defenseless. Every night he spent in her embrace, the program was executing a deep system wipe of his human operating system, slowly scrubbing his short-term memories, deleting his language centers, and erasing the dangerous navigation data he had collected. Even his terrifying physical modifications were mere system side effects. His hardened, seamless feet and impossible running speed were the result of his physical asset model being aggressively optimized to survive the low-poly terrain of the sandbox server, while the core data inside his mind was being systematically overwritten.
On February 2nd, 1709, the sudden physical arrival of Captain Woods Rogers and his crew forced a catastrophic hard interrupt on the Juan Fernandez isolation server. The system was caught entirely off guard, running a deep memory wipe on Selkirk at the exact moment the landing party breached the island's code perimeter.
Because the simulation administrators had to instantly terminate the quarantine session to avoid exposing the system's architecture to the privateer crew, the defragmentation script was aborted mid-cycle. Selkirk was pulled out of the sandbox and dragged back into the primary timeline, but his core code was left permanently corrupted. He returned to England as an unpatched anomaly, half human and half reprogrammed machine.
Though he was physically returned to society, the psychological damage was irreversible. Selkirk could no longer adapt to the standard behavioral programming of human civilization. He found regular English houses suffocating, money meaningless, and the ambient noise of London deafening. In a desperate attempt to recreate the silent, sensory-deprived environment of the quarantine server, he dug a deep cave into the earth behind his house, spending his remaining years sitting in total darkness.
The official history books call Alexander Selkirk a heroic castaway whose survival story inspired Robinson Crusoe, but the private archives of the 1709 voyage tell a far more chilling story. They serve as a warning left behind in the salt-stained logs of maritime history. If you ever find yourself stranded on a silent shore and the passage of time suddenly begins to skip, do not close your eyes. The defrag routine has already begun.
Alexander Selkirk was just one file that failed to delete properly. A single corrupted fragment left behind in the historical record because a privateer crew interrupted the server's cleaning cycle.
It makes you wonder how many other unpatched anomalies are currently walking among us today. People who survived a missing piece of time, thinking their trauma was just a vivid dream or a trick of the mind.
If you want to uncover the rest of the simulation's deleted history, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for the next broadcast.
Let us know in the comments which historical glitch we should investigate next. This is Ages and Omens. The system is watching.